judges to reach results that they regard as just, and they're willing to stretch and strain with the text if necessary. In 1973, a lot of judges felt like a woman's right to abortion was pretty important, and the court found it in the Constitution. In 1905, a lot of people thought that a right to contract was important, and the court found it in the Constitution.
John Marshall Harlan, joined by two other justices, dissented in Lochner. The state of New York had presented compelling facts as to the health hazard to bakers. That was good enough for him. Oliver Wendell Holmes, acting alone, made a more sweeping dissent, a frontal assault on judicial activism.
Holmes says we, the judges, are imposing our policy views on the nation as a whole when we do this. We talk about liberty of contract, we talk about property, we have all these words, but in fact what's going on here is you don't like this legislation. You think this is bad for the country. You, my fellow justices, you may be right, he says. But our job is not to decide whether it's good or bad for the country. It's to decide what do the people of this country want. And New York State can go to hell in a handbasket as far as I'm concerned in its public policy, but my job is to see that it gets there.
Holmes did not do this because he had great faith in American politicians. He called them the thick-fingered clowns at one time. He was not a reformer. He was not necessarily in favor of the rights of labor. He just felt that if in this struggle which is going on between interest groups, between labor and capital, if labor wins one and they get a victory in the New York legislature, then who are the judges to make up this stuff in the 14th Amendment and strike them down?
Like all justices of his day, Holmes did his real work at home. He wrote his first famous dissent in his personal library, surrounded by the guiding stars of his life. On his shelves were well-thumbed books by Charles Darwin, Herbert Spencer, and his hero Malthus, whose ideas inspired the theory of natural selection. In Holmes's closet were battle-torn relics of his war. "These uniforms were worn by me in the Civil War," said a note pinned to them, "and the stains upon them are my blood."
He was in rebellion against certitude as a result of the war. The one thing that he did come away with, and it also becomes a key to his jurisprudence, is the sort of nobility of the struggle. He said it was our great good fortune to be on that generation that fought this war, and what you learned was that whether you're given by destiny a spade and you dig, or whether you get an axe and you scale the ice, the one true thing you bring to it is a great heart.
Holmes is a skeptic without becoming a cynic, which is, I think, what to me is endearing about him in a way. He didn't think anybody knew how to make society better, but he was deeply respectful of the people who struggled to do so.
The struggle between capital and labor was the ferocious fight during Holmes's years on the court. Capital held the high ground. Progressive reformers kept pushing for maximum hours and minimum wage laws to ease the daily burden on workers. They wanted limits on child labor and the right of workers to form unions and bargain as a collective. Holmes's personal allegiance lay with capital, and he didn't think any reform would much help the working classes. But when progressives managed to get laws passed that squeezed owners, Justice Holmes refused to strike them down, unless they were unarguably unconstitutional. Now and then, he gathered a majority for upholding reasonable regulation. But Holmes made few reliable converts among his fellow justices, and he would occasionally turn his biting wit on his colleagues. Holmes had grown particularly weary of John Marshall Harlan's moralizing, but an uncharacteristic sentimentality seeped out of Holmes on the news of Harlan's death. The old boy had outlived his usefulness, Holmes wrote. but he was a figure the like of which I shall not see again.
When he died, the black community of Washington was quite saddened, and the African Methodist Episcopalian Church actually had a memorial service for him. And in the program, there's a photograph of Harlan, and on it says, "A true friend of the people." And they played Beethoven's on That's the Hero.
In his own home, and sometimes out of it, he was charming, Holmes noted. On my 70th birthday, who but he but thought to put a little bunch of violets on my desk in coral. Peace to his ashes. By 1912, the great stalwarts of liberty of contract, Brewer, Peckham, and Fuller, had all given up the ghost too. But President William Howard Taft reloaded the court with justices also willing to strike down state and federal laws that intruded on the free market economy. Holmes's only sure ally in the cause of judicial modesty was a Woodrow Wilson appointee, Louis Brandeis, who in 1916 became the first Jewish member of the court.
Holmes and Brandeis were the great dissenting duo of the Progressive era, and they're forever linked together as Holmes and Brandeis, but they were entirely different men. Holmes approved of progressive legislation because he didn't care. Brandeis was righteous, he was zealous, he was passionate about the issues of his time. Holmes hated facts. If you read a Holmes opinion, there are almost no facts in it. Contrasted with a Brandeis opinion, Brandeis is just going to roll you over with facts.
One summer, Holmes was going on vacation in the summer. And Brandeis said, "Hey, Oliver Wendell, why don't you learn about the garment industry? Maybe you can read up on the garment industry." And Holmes sort of, you can see him rolling his eyes like, "Lovely. That's
Excuse me, everyone, I have one afternoon announcement. Attention freshman baseball players. After defeating Western Hills last night 15-0, your game tonight is canceled. But you will have practice in the junior high gym after school. That is, the freshman baseball players